Hey folks, welcome to this exciting video where you once again join me in the wild landscape of Scotland. And for this adventure I've come to a piece of land nearby the last adventure when I'm in kind of the Carmiley area here in Scotland. And today I've come to document a piece of World War II history. I've only been here one time before, but I thought I would come back and just explore it once again because I noticed it was a stubble field. So to get to it, I don't have to like disturb any of the farmers' crops and stuff. I should be able to go around and document the history. So it's great with these adventures, like heading into these pieces of land. I'm just following this track. I've kind of come this direction from this forest. And look at these clouds today in the sky. It's almost like wind clouds, you would call it. But the sky just looks absolutely amazing. And then this ancient wonder is just over in the middle of this field. So to get to this field, folks, I've walked absolute miles. I've been crossing like little burns and rivers and through that mad forest, and I will record it on the way back out. But on today's adventures, I've already done one and I've just got one GoPro battery left, so I just saved the camera till we got to this incredible wonder. But the interesting thing with this World War II history, there's no sign of any other buildings out on this piece of land apart from this massive construction, which I theorised was like a generator site, a massive generator. So I'm not sure if there had been an old like World War II listening station or something, or maybe even a bit of an airfield kind of site in this area. The land is quite level, but also it's a slope, and normally you wouldn't see them putting airfields on slopes like that. So it is interesting to theorise the history as to why this was here. It may have even been a big generator shed for a searchlight. Sometimes they would have anti-aircraft guns down at the coast, like around here it would be Arbroath, or maybe even the Condor, which is still a current military base. But they would often have their searchlights miles back, miles away, and I believe that's potentially what this could have been here. It's just an interesting piece of land. Obviously as we get nearer it just gets bigger and bigger. I'd forgotten the scale and the size of this, but there is an interesting strip in the land leads up. It's just an old like field boundary, I believe. That's why it's so strange here, but there's no sign of any other like cement building or even a cement base where a building had been. But often after the war, farmers and things would knock stuff like that down or take it away to regain the farmland which they originally lost. Often at the start of the war or whatever, they would just get a letter in the mail saying that their land had been requisitioned for the military or the RAF. And then after the wars were over, often that land would just be given back, and whatever buildings or bunkers or any items were built were just given to the landowners. And sometimes farmers would use buildings like that for sheds or whatever, but the reason you can tell it's military construction is the way the doors are built, and also the earth on the roof to give it disguise. There's also, they would have had camouflage over a building like this back in the day. But the reason the door's shaped like that is to prevent the blasts going in. If there was a detonation out here with like a bomb or even grenades, it would prevent any shrapnel from going in, but also the force of the blast, and it would rescue or save the equipment within the bunker or even the people within it. Originally this would have had a cement grey colour render on it, and then the roof would have like a black bitumen coating, and then the earth and mud put over as a camouflage, so the German Air Force wouldn't be able to spot it so easily from the air if they were doing reconnaissance. But it's such a thick, strong construction out here. It's just mad to think there's no other little details of the history around here. Going all the way around, it's just clear open fields. Anyway, let's take a look at this site first. We'll walk right around the outside before we go into the structure. Look at this, the way it's wider at the bottom than it is at the top. And the way this entranceway is all built in. Yeah, look, it's like it's had potentially a door on here or a hatch, but I'm not sure about that. Maybe always was just like this. there is remains of the internal door here, and these buildings used to always have, like World War II buildings had like little wooden doors often painted green. Yeah, see the building, folks. I'm not sure if it's the lichen or if that is an original black paint that's on there. Imagine this building if it was fully black with a black bitumen coating on the roof, and the roof's made super strong and thick, almost like some of the fuel pumping station buildings that we saw in last week's adventures up at World War II RAF Ferdinand. The way they constructed these buildings back in the day was just insane. Look at this, there's nails chapped in, bent over, and that could actually be a sign of where they used to hook on the camo netting. Look, it's right around each corner on each side. See, already that's history that I hadn't noticed the last time. Sometimes they would have nails like that to hold the camo netting in, so it would drape properly all around the structure. Often the true shape or identity of a place like this wouldn't be easy to see. But look, this pipe's definitely continued off further at one time. Maybe even under the ground here there could be some aircraft fuel storage, and it could even be piped under the ground for miles from a place like this. And it's just like forgotten history from the World War II time. Look, this massive one here is also sticking out. If they weren't pipes connected to tanks or whatever, I'm just interested to think like what they may have been, because there must have been vents on the other hand. And just think about the size of that. Even that fuel craft storage place that we visited last week didn't have vents that big. So whatever they were doing here was like a mega deal. And all the way around it's got those nails chapped in, which is interesting to see. Details of history like that, folks, it's just mad. There's such a variation in Scotland. Like, it's not all very far from each other, but it's just such a different time frame or time period. Look at this, folks, as well. There's another massive round pipe here, and you can see the shape of the building. It's not a square. At one time, potentially, it had that black coating on it, and then the earth was maybe even piled up a lot more. Because considering how much earth's on the roof, even to this day, it's quite cool to see. And then this other end has had no pipes coming out, so it's interesting to see that difference. It's like this has been two halves. And then like there's been something busted out of the wall at this corner. Often the farmers or landowners would just scrap the items from a building like this after the war. And if there had been metal pipes or anything through there, that's what would have been pulled out. Sometimes it left big holes in structures like that. Yeah, I can see there's even nails around here. Big swarm of midges at that corner as well. Yeah, I love World War II history, the character of it. And the amount of years since World War II now, the buildings are just on their last years of existence, and it's mad just to document them before they're gone. It's like there's been something else coming out here, maybe a pipe. There could have been tanks or anything around these areas that you wouldn't actually see any evidence of now, because think how many times these fields have been ploughed and landscaped, or like farmed on, I should say. It would just change how they look. And then look at that there. Oh, there's the metal grate in there still. It's actually like one of those ones with a little slider so you can open and shut it. Let's head on in. I've still got the torch in my pocket from that last adventure, when I was at that massive abandoned house in the forest. And just look at that for a scene of abandoned history. Yeah, so I think last time I came here I didn't have a torch, and it was like an unexpected explore. Even today I didn't plan to come here, but I did bring a torch. So it's cool to see in these places, and sometimes the details of the history which is left within them. I'll just rotate the torch around there so I can actually hold it. Check this out. The remains of an old door frame. Potentially World War II door. Check this out, folks. This is what makes me think it was RAF. Potentially fuel storage and pumping. Because look at this, it's the green RAF paint on the door, which we've seen at so many abandoned places that we've been to. And check it out, I didn't even remember this detail of the history. Look, it's had a ladder here going up to the roof. So there's been a proper lookout. So this end here has been like the little headquarters or bunker area, kind of where the boy would have been manning this area. Look how the rebars folded and bent down. And look, it's had like some old alloy ladder. I would love to jump up and try and climb up. It's had a little latch of some sort there on the roof. Yeah, it must have been like a lot of bunkers and places, even air raid shelters, they've got an emergency escape. So if the front area gets blown up or blocked, they can actually climb out to safety from an area like that. And I think it was more of an escape rather than like looking out there to shoot anybody that was coming. And these must have been identical vents at each side. Look, it's cool to video those vents. I think it's on its last years of existence, like, look, you can see the paint, it's been white. There's definitely a white paint there. It's like there's been a black undercoat with white paint. Wow. Yeah, this is super cool. Look, here's remains of where there's been apparatus mounted on the wall. And look at that. That shows after the wall, all the systems and things were stripped out. Most likely before it was given back to the farmer, but sometimes even farmers would strip these places out and scrap what they didn't need because the history of the war wasn't so important. Like at a certain time, they were just glad the war was over it in the early days. Buildings like this didn't have as much meaning as what nowadays, when you think of the history, and each place played a crucial role in defending the country. Look at the paint. I love the way paint on these old buildings flakes off. Often that's because the old paint back in the day had a high lead content in it. Look at that, WI written there, old vintage graffiti. That's what I love to see. It's almost like, imagine the 1940s. Look, there's been the wire coming in here. You see the old clips? It's so cool to see. Yeah, these would have been nice. Imagine when it was painted white and it looked amazing, the doors and stuff. Yeah, this is kind of eerie in here because it almost looks like there's animals. Well, there's definitely animals living under the floor here. I think it's most likely rabbits. But look at that, it's like, what has this room even been? Look, this is a throwback here on the wall, folks. The graffiti there says Bay City Rollers. And if anybody knows Scottish music, or old Scottish bands, there's one. And that shows somebody was hanging out here back at the days after the war. This would have probably been their den. Look how the wires come through there, through the lintel. And then it's got the clips there, most likely the little black and red wires. Look, there's a big nail or whatever trapped in, so there's been something mounted into wood at this area. And that's the kind of details of the history that I do love to see. Look at that. The wire's been coming right along to this centrepiece, which has got a bit of wood in. And those openings are just so big. A lot of this earth, I think, has come in here after the war. I think if you dug down, it would have a stone floor, similar height to the other end. But now it's just a land of rabbits here. Like, you wouldn't believe how many rabbit holes and different networks is under here. This is insane, folks. And I can see just the way it's been painted white. Each wall near the top is less affected by the weather. And even on this wall, look at the paint. What a cool little spot this is, folks. When I remembered about this area, I just thought it would be so cool to come back and see it. I was actually on my way to another adventure that you might have seen in the last video, and I could see that the field around this place was just stubble. And that's often the best time to go exploring because you don't want to be damaging crops or anything like that. The worst thing to do is upsetting the farmers or the owners of the land. Check out this old crate here, folks. Look, can you actually see what it says? I'm sure it says Scottish and Newcastle Breweries Limited. Newcastle on Tyne. So that's interesting to see that old box, folks. I don't know if it would come out better. Nah, I was just going to try away the torch to see how it looked. Yeah, what a cool adventure. And you can just imagine them climbing up there if something had happened. Again, often the Germans would fly over, like shooting up places like this, and the people would be running for cover, or after the Germans were away, they might have to make an escape out of an area like this. And then serious repairs would have to be made. Look, this one's had the light as well in the centre. Yeah, there's probably been some mental big like generator or pumping system in there, and you can imagine the noise from it. It's maybe even a backup fuel storage and pumping area. Another detail in the architecture here, folks, this almost office-like door is narrower here than the one over at this end. And that could have been because of the equipment that must have gone in and out of this door. It must have been no bigger than this door. There's how the original door frame had been mounted. Yeah, it's just insane. I'm not sure if at a certain time it was used for livestock or even maybe chickens. Wow, I've just loved it, folks. When I'm in the middle of this World War II history, it's crazy because often the more I look around, the more like hidden bits of the history I see. And I'm just looking at the walls often to see if there's any old numbers or writing from the wartime period. So there's an interesting point in the building, folks. Look in that corner, there's a pipe. And that was most likely where the electrical wires or whatever were coming up into this corner. It's just cool to see that. I've just about missed that detail. And then there's another cool detail here that I noticed in this kind of entranceway. You can see the wood there on the wall. So there must have been items as well mounted here. A building like this was fully industrial for kind of the purpose of whatever was in this room, which I think must have been a massive pumping room or even generator room. It was either a generator supporting an anti-aircraft like light, and they would shine the light so the distant anti-aircraft guns could fire at the approaching planes, or it could have even been an anti-aircraft gun up here supported from this building. But another thing, there's a potential this could have been like a RAF fuel storage area. But it is quite mysterious how this building is abandoned in such a way out here in this land. With a building like this, they would lay the wood in and pour the cement, obviously building the red brick part separate. And it is just insane, like you could tell these pipes are original features, because look how the bricks are actually built around them. It's never been altered or changed. It's an original detail there of the building, and each of these pipes is the same. And that's the kind of thing I love to look at and see, because I think they're like the farmer or whoever owns this has been using it as a bit of a stable at a certain time. So many years pass, these places just can get used and reused and then abandoned over and over again from their different purposes. And I think these wooden parts have been like makeshift doors mounted in areas like that after the war. But yeah, it's been so cool. Look how thick that part of the roof right there is at the entranceway. And you can see the similar construction to what we saw last week when we were at the RAF buildings at Furden, or a couple of weeks ago when we were at the RAF buildings at Teelan. You can see the wartime construction, the shape of the door, the way these things were built for maximum defence. And on the roof there at this end, you can see how the emergency escape actually sticks up about 1.5 feet above the roof height, and that shows that it definitely would have had that thick layer of earth there originally, and obviously the emergency escape would be at the height of the earth. There we are, folks, we've documented the piece of history. Now this adventure continues because it's just some madness to get out of this location. The landscape here is so extreme. And look at the sky. It's mad that history like that's hidden in beautiful areas that I normally wouldn't even see if I didn't come to see the abandoned history. It gives me an excuse to get out into the mad little parts of the world like this. It's so cool to see. It's the sort of place, folks, I was just getting a couple of pictures and just look at it from that angle. The mixture of the sky and the wild land around it. The abandoned history in the middle. The Scottish landscape looks so incredible when you see things like that. I just had to put the camera back on after taking that picture and that. Get its cool off and taking a few photos and then putting them at the end of the video. But yeah, the character of that within the colour of this land at this time of year, it's so special. And the adventure to come here, it's just been amazing. So check this out here, folks. This is some mad, wild bit of land. The ancient wonder we just visited's over there. And I've just come down that track and now basically I'm on this wild bit of land. It's kind of like a field obviously for cows or sheep. But this time of year I'm obviously lucky because I think the boy's got his cows and that at the farm. Look at this, you can tell how cold it is. I say it's 1 degree Celsius, folks. Look, you can tell I'm not joking. Look at the ice. That's the kind of conditions we're dealing with out here on these adventures. And these puddles and stuff have got the layer of ice on them, frozen solid. And that's a real cold wind coming down this way. And I just basically need to head kind of this direction. But it is mad, I have to go into the forest because there's a point down here that two rivers actually, well, two little burns join together, and once it's one burn, the water's too deep. So I basically need to go into that forest to the area where I can safely cross the burns individually. And that's sometimes what these adventures are all about, folks. We have to navigate the wild lands to get to the history that's so far off the normal beaten path. The circumstances just have to be right often in the land to get to these places to document them, and that's how it's so special being able to share these videos. The adventure's real on this channel and I just love it. Like navigating these bits of land sometimes, it's just so cool. So check this out here, folks. This is the point in the burn I was saying. Two burns join into one at this spot, so if you're in this area here it's super deep all the way downstream, but if you just go a little bit further up you can actually cross the burns individually, and then it does make it easier because I do have the wellies on for this adventure and that's made this possible. But this landscape I'm in now, I need to navigate this forest up all the way to the main road where my car's parked, and it's just overgrown, untamed forest right here. And I basically need to go down to this spot here, I believe. This is so cool, folks. It's mad, these bits of land. There's a few bits up there that would probably be easy to cross as well. I'll record this here, folks, just in case I fall in. I believe this is actually a different bit of the burn as to where I crossed earlier. Yeah, that's the stone there that I crossed at. Wow. Bits of the river's deeper, like in places. I need to just be super careful here. This is where I came over. Wow, folks, the flow of the river pushing the wellies. I'm just taking my time here. As you can see, it's just like not even halfway up the wellies. But it is kind of off-putting when you get that water like flowing past you. It kind of often would put you off balance almost. And then this little river here, it's not quite so ferocious. But I reckon I just need to kind of push on up the side of here. I'm not going to bother crossing this. Even though I came down that way, I'm just thinking I could just push on up the forest here, because it's the very same kind of area that I need to go. I'm just reading the land as I go as well, picking a route. So I've decided to cross over at this point in the land here, folks, because there is probably like about a mile, maybe a mile and a half that I need to go, and the forest can often be a slow area to walk through. Oh, look at this here. At least this is a chance to get my wellies washed when I cross these little burns here. It's like the wildest, most untamed lands here, folks. Little burns like this just carve the land, and a lot of this has been left for the storms recently. These burns have been a lot higher in the last few weeks. So you can see here, folks, how at an ancient time this little burn used to actually meander around here, and then it would have swirled like that, whereas now it's just changed course. And that's what happens with little burns, and even big rivers do that over a long period of time. But it's cool sometimes to see the evidence of that in the land. Hundreds of years ago, probably in a storm, the river just changed course, started to go in a straight line. Wow, this place is just savage and wild right here. This is like a little waterfall. I'm not even sure what way I should be going. I need to go right up that way. It's just so overgrown and wild. Wow, folks, I'm going for it. I'm going to go down here and back across. That's what these adventures are all about, folks. Not only the abandoned history, the wild lands as well, which it's within. Bearing in mind it's 1 degree Celsius right here, and literally every time I go in that I can feel how cold the water is. Yeah, there's just trees and stuff. Sometimes when you're at one side of the river it looks like it's easy at the other side, and then when you come over it's just no easier. Check out, folks, that massive gorge down there has been worn from the burn over the years, probably when it's in spate. But I can see it's worn right down to like the bedrock seam down there. And then look at this mad wild land I'm navigating. A lot of trees just blown down. Old tracks through the forest, no longer accessible. It's just mad to see. This is like some deer path that I'm on right now. And to most eyes it probably doesn't even look like a path in the land. But I'm sure I'm not far from the main road now. Hopefully if I just keep pushing through this crazy wild land here, I'll get to the car. It's just mad, look at this. Crazy Scottish jungle right here. And then the sound of the wee burn trickling past the bottom of the hill. It's amazing. It's a fairy tale world we're exploring. All these trees, check them out, folks, uprooted. There's nothing but ferns and bracken in an area like this, and probably in another month's time this will all die back and go brown. In some areas it already has died back. I think this is pretty protected here for the forest. I've seen so many deer run about. When I was on that last adventure at the far end of this forest, I actually heard shooting, and I think the estate was shooting, so I headed pretty much out of that area. But that's maybe the reason there's a lot of deer kicking about at this end of the forest. They've maybe been running away for the gunshots. So on this video, once again, I need to thank everybody that's clicked subscribe in the last while, or even ever, because I'm so happy I can share places like that. It's little historical wonders. It's almost lost to nature and time. They're not the easiest of places to get to. So the history is often just each year decaying more and more, and it's harder to even tell what some of these places were the more time that passes, and then the stories can get forgotten. So it is cool to see what was there, and the way they constructed that, and the way it had that emergency escape hatch, which showed that it did always have the earth over the top. Uncovering the layers of history in places like that, so special. Yeah, I just pretty much need to keep heading along here, I believe. The landscape I'm in, folks, it's just a proper Scottish jungle for sure. I'm having to take big steps through these deep ferns at times. Sometimes there's deep holes down through the vegetation in an area like this. And then there's so many trees blowing over. All the original forest roads now are just proper blocked and changed. The only paths are animal paths. And that, we've been successful today with our adventure. When I first came into this forest I thought I would get lost, to be honest, but we've been so lucky that we hadn't. I was able to read the land and navigate the land, and that's been 2 cool adventures I've been on basically since I came out of the car. If you want to see the abandoned house I was at before this World War II place, you can check out the last video on the channel. This has been absolutely mad here today, folks. The amount of trees and the different obstacles I've had to navigate here. That's what makes it though, the wildlands of Scotland. Hardly seen, hardly documented. Yes, I can see it. We've made it back to the original entry point that I came into the forest. I can see the old gate post here. Yeah folks, so in the last video when I went to the old abandoned house, I originally came into the site at that old gate. Whereas in today's adventure, I've basically made it to that old World War II site, but then navigated back to this forest to get back to my car, and it's been mad. I'm absolutely knackered after walking through that forest terrain, having to climb over trees and through ditches, over rivers, but it's always worth it to see the abandoned history and document it here on the channel. That's the sort of place, I've never seen it on somebody else's video, or it's hard to even get history on a wild location like that. But it's cool to document what's left to this day and see the way that they used to build the things, like the way the wiring and stuff was in there, and the way it had the lights, and the way that the bricks were built with the cement roof, with the earth. It's just crazy, a different time. It's when the country was under genuine invasion from the air, from the Germans back at that time. Britain built places all over to do with the war, but that one's such a mysterious structure. It's a fun adventure, a fun place to explore and just ask the question of history. Right folks, that's me just about back at my car, so I'm going to end this video here. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll be back soon with the next adventure, wherever I end up going.